Alireza Firouzja is in tremendous form as he have won the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz tournament. And the fun fact is, and I think it's one of the interesting part that Alireza Firouzja actually became the champion like before the 4 rounds have been completed. Before the last 4 rounds, Alireza Firouzja have taken 4 points lead, so he has already been declared as the champion of the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz. And definitely, St. Louis Rapid and Blitz is a tournament where top grandmasters of the world plays, and Alireza Firouzja is one of the top grandmasters. So, in this video, we are going to discuss his two best games of the tournament that I felt that perhaps these two games is going to be very interesting. So all the Sicilian players, all the English players, all players who want to learn a new opening, which is nowadays becoming very popular, very trendy. So I think it's going to help you, because if the top grandmasters are playing it, then definitely the opening is good. So we are going to quickly discuss two games. First game, we have Alireza Firouzja versus Nepomniachtchi, and in the second game we have Hikaru Nakamura versus Alireza Firouzja. The games are going to be very interesting, so let's start. So in the 10th round, we have the encounter between Alireza Firouzja versus Nepomniachtchi, and Alireza is playing with the white pieces, and both the games are in Blitz format. But just don't look at you can just definitely look at the opening, because opening is complete theory, but the games are actually mind-blowing. So Alireza with the white pieces starts out the game with 1c4, e5, solid e5, very aggressive. This is the standard way to play. You can even go for playing c5, but it's a positional. e5, that I would recommend e5. d3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, a3. The idea of a3 in these positions are usually white continues with knight c3, but black gets this bishop to b4 idea. That is the reason white is playing a3 to stop bishop b4, and perhaps in the future the idea could be to expand on the queen side. We have d5, black is opening up the center, cd, knight into d5, and here we have e4. So you can already sense it's basically like a reverse Sicilian. And when the Sicilian is played with the white pieces, we call it the English opening. So after d5, cd, knight into d5, e4, the knight goes to b6. You can also put, I think, knight to f6 is also completely fine move. But knight to b6, bishop to e2, bishop to e7, castle, castle. It's all theory, guys, so you don't need to worry about it. Bishop e3, both the sides are simply developing the pieces, and here Ian strikes with f5. And after playing f5, the first thing we need to look at is what happens if black takes. If black takes, we can simply take it back, so nothing is happening. Black can either push the pawn to f4 and try to attack on the king side. But yeah, so that's the plan. But after playing f5, the main thing that many beginners do not notice is that this diagonal is weak. Once you play f5, you can already see that the light square diagonal is completely weak. So it's my advice, whenever you see a weak diagonal, try to take control of that diagonal, or try to take control of that weak squares, I would say. So after playing f5, here Alireza decides to play b4. Now what's the idea? The idea of playing b4 in this position is, first of all, he's trying to expand on the queen side, and second here is, as we can say that black is having the majority pawn structure on the queen side, and black is having 2 pawns. So once we trade 2 pawns, we are going to be left with 1 pawn of black, which is going to be tremendously weak, so it can be target in the future for white. So b4, we have f4. So that is one of the move that many players are afraid of. Bishop c1. Now you can look at how Alireza plays. Bishop c1, a6. Perhaps we do not want to allow this b5 move. a6, and here we have bishop to b2. Although you have already executed the move f4, but now you can already look at that the e5 pawn is tremendously weak. So black defended by playing bishop f6, knight to d2, and here we have g5 by Nepo. Nepo definitely wants to execute the move g4 and try to gain some attacking advantage. We have simply h3 move, and after h3, black decides to play bishop to e6. All those who are thinking what happens after g4, white can simply capture, black can capture, rook c1, and after rook c1, now there are few things that black need to worry about. Like first of all, if black makes a move like king h8, the best move in this position is to give a exchange sacrifice, rook into c6, pawn takes, and knight into e5. And after knight into e5, you can already sense that black, as we know that black have pushed his pawn, so black king is actually completely exposed in the corner, and which actually makes the king very weak. So it actually gives a white a decent advantage in this position. And even if you don't want to sacrifice, like for example, after king h8, you can even go for playing a4. And after a4, like if you try to capture the pawn on b4, we have bishop into e5, and you lose the center pawn, and it's already good for white. And even if you do not capture the pawn, b5 is coming up, which is tremendously strong move, which in the future you are going to have some problems on the c7 pawn. So this is all what is happening if black tries to play g4. But we have bishop e6. Nepo is trying to take control of the diagonal, which is a good thing. We have rook c1, and here we have queen to d6. Queen d6 was not a good move, but I know the reason why Nepo played. The reason Nepo played played queen to d6 in this position is because he knew that Alireza wants to sacrifice the rook. As I just discussed, that rook into c6 is a good move. B into c6, and we lose the and black loses the e5 pawn, which gives white a very tremendous advantage, and yeah, having a good chances to win the game, because white is having two center pawns which are extremely strong. That is the reason black played queen d6, so that if white tries to capture the knight, after pawn takes, this pawn is actually defended by the bishop and the queen, so nothing's happening. But actually, at the place of queen d6, knight d7 was much better because it also defends the e5 pawn. And the second thing is, if you ever try to put the knight to b3 to c5, black is having an option to capture the knight, as the knight covers the c5 square. But queen d6, it was a blitz game. They cannot think too much. Knight b3, and here we have rook to d8. Knight c5, and we can already sense that this knight is tremendously powerful, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn. Many of you agree that perhaps black should capture the knight. But then after capturing the knight, you can definitely go for capturing the knight. It's fine move. But after queen takes, you can already sense that now black is no longer having the white square bishop, and this diagonal is absolutely weak, which gives white I think a very good advantage. For example, if black tries to play something like king to g7, I would say a4, b5 is coming up. White squares are in the control of white, which actually gives white a good advantage. That's the thing in chess. You just need to take control of the weak squares. You need to develop the minor pieces. That's all. But we have rook to d8, knight c5, and bishop to c8. So basically, this was the idea of Nepo. He wanted to play some passively. He is defending the b7 pawn, and it looks like nothing is happening. We have rook e1, a slow move by Firouzja, simply developing the piece. Nepo also played h6, trying to simply wait. Queen c2, a5. After deep thought, he decides to play a5. A5, yeah, that looks one of the most natural move in the position. But actually, the rook f7 could have been slightly much more accurate because it defends the c7 pawn in the future. So basically, black need to play something like passive chess. He just need to play in his own side. But if they try to play a5, trying to open up the position, here we have ba5, knight a5, d4, trying to open up the position. A good move by Alireza, knight to c6, not opening up the position. If black captures the pawn, we have e5, hitting the bishop and the queen. Bishop takes is a fourth move, knight takes, queen takes, and bishop check. Okay, bishop check is not a good move because we have knight into, rook into, knight into, and this position is equalish because I would say because black is having this for this. and the black is having 6 pawns, whereas white is having 4 pawns, which makes the position equal. But in this position, after we push the pawn, black takes, knight takes, queen takes, we play bishop to g4. Queen move, knight to e6, and we hit both the rooks. Bishop need to capture, rook into, and believe me guys, it's game over. You can already sense it that the game is over. This is hanging, queen is coming in, there is no chance for black to survive. That's the reason you cannot capture. So knight to c6 was played, and here we have simply d5 ban. Alireza not opening up the position because this is still winning like knight into e5. Perhaps he can play something like he can even capture its winning, he can even get the rooks. But he decides to close the position, knight goes back, knight to d3, and simply making a weakness on c7 pawn. And now, not even the c7, but the e5 pawn is hanging, and the c7 pawn is also hanging. So c6 was played, pawn takes, bishop to e6. Black can actually not capture the pawn back. The reason is, like for example, if capture the knight, queen b3 check, and you lose this b6 field. That's the problem. You cannot capture this pawn. That is the reason bishop e6, covering this b3 square for the queen. And now knight into e5. Pawn takes, bishop comes to d4, hitting this knight. Queen goes to c7, knight takes pawn, bishop takes, knight takes, rook to d6, pawn push, rook takes, knight takes. Actually, nothing was happening. Alireza actually played a good chess. Queen d7, knight takes, and in this position, Nepo decides to resign the game. The reason is, like, he played queen d7 thinking that if white takes, he can take this knight, although it's still winning, but still. But he simply captured the knight, and after bishop takes, queen takes, you win a piece, and you are simply a rook up, it's completely winning. And just need to tell you some few points, like if takes, that definitely the position looks a bit complicated too much. Like this is hanging, what should black do? So what's happening? If in this position black tries to capture the knight, then we are going to capture the bishop, rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, and knight to d7, rook d1, and the first of all, white is a 2-pawner. And second thing is, you can already sense that this is already very dangerous. Like bishop is coming, knight is coming, you cannot move the bishop because the rook is hanging. You cannot move the knight because this rook is hanging, the knight is coming in, the bishop is coming in, and the game is already over. You're also having a pass pawn on the a5. So I would say this was a fantastic game where Alireza simply crushed Jan Nepomniachtchi by playing the English opening, which I think all the Sicilian players, all the best to play this opening. You can actually go and try it out. So this was the opening. So this was the game between Alireza Firouzja and Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now let's move to the game of Hikaru Nakamura versus Alireza Firouzja, which I would think was one of the best game also of Alireza Firouzja. So in the game between Hikaru Nakamura versus Alireza Firouzja, Hikaru is playing with the white pieces and Alireza is playing with the black pieces. And this was the 21st round, and the game is of Blitz format. So let's check it out. So Hikaru playing with the white pieces starts out the game with one knight f3, d5, e3, knight to f6, c4. And guys, just look at the opening closely because this opening is particularly becoming one of the most popular and trending opening nowadays. So c4, white is not committing the pawn to d3 or d4. That's the fun part. c4, e6, b3, b3, and also look from the black side how to respond against this opening. So g3, we have c5, bishop to b2, having this knight bishop, knight to c6, c into d5, e into d5, bishop to b5, developing the bishop, keeping the pawn to d2, bishop to d6, short castle, and now playing d4. After d4, cd, knight into d4, because you do not want to capture the pawn with the e pawn because it makes the bishop on b2 simply bad. So knight into b2, knight into d4, and here we have bishop to c7. So many of you think that the d5 pawn is weak, which gives white some slight advantage. But actually, guys, in the other hand, definitely the d5 pawn is extremely weak. It's an isolated pawn, but in the exchange, black is having this great diagonal attacking chances. I would say perhaps queen to d6, hitting this pawn on h2. These can be some tremendous ideas. Like for example, after bishop c7, if white tries to capture the knight, pawn takes and white tries to be a pawn grabber. After queen d6, it's a mate and the bishop is also hanging. So it's already game over. White need to defend it, and after queen into c6, black is a piece up and the game is on. So white really can't capture the knight. So white played knight to d2. Black decides to capture bishop into d4. You have to take with the bishop, or else after pawn takes, it makes the bishop simply bad. The bishop takes, and now playing queen to d6. And after playing queen d6, black is simply threatening a checkmate on h2. So you don't really want to play f4 move like f4 because first of all it makes e3 pawn tremendously weak, and black can simply play bishop b6, and I think black's very comfortable because of the weak e pawn. So you have to play g3. In the game we have g3, but I know that many of you are thinking what to play after knight to f3. Like what's happening? The h2 pawn is simply defending. Now comes bishop to g4, pinning up the knight, and the idea is to capture the knight and threatening a mate on h2 on the next move. For example, h3, we simply take, queen takes, and queen h2 and the game is over. So you have to play g3 in this position now because you are forced, because you do not want to get mated. Knight to e4 now. And after knight e4, the idea for black in this position is black wants to put the bishop on a5 and then bishop to h3 and simply trap this rook. This is the idea. Like for example, a move like king g2, which is completely natural move, trying to take away the square, knight g5. And after knight g5, you can't capture the knight really because the queen is hanging. And you have to play bishop e2, trying to defend the knight. But now after bishop check, the king moves and we can capture the rook and we are exchange up and we are winning. So after, for example, after bishop g4, g3, knight to e4, if white tries to play a3, like after bishop a5, white can play b4, we can play in this position something like, I think even queen e6 is a fine move, threatening bishop h3, and you can already sense that black is at least better. I don't know, perhaps even h5 looks good. So these are the ideas. g3 was played in the group. Bishop to a5 now, attacking this knight. a3, bishop to h3, rook move, bishop into knight, queen into knight king, queen e2, rook c8 trying to take this open c5, bishop to d3 trying to capture this knight because this knight looks very irritating for white. Bishop f5, and here we have b4. And this position many of the players actually thought, like when I was looking at the game, I thought that it's Alireza offering it free, offering it raw, because after bishop takes, I would say bishop takes, or I think even pawn takes a fine move. It looks like it's an opposite color bishop, so it should be a draw. But guys, you can already sense that the white squares are tremendously weak, and black can have ideas like this. And I think after bishop takes, pawn takes, and I think the ideas could be this. I think it's going to be very hard, very difficult for white to hold this to a draw. Because in the opposite color bishop, if the queens are on the board, the position is not so easy to pick up. So Nakamura decides to play b4, queen to g6, and in this position, black is threatening to play knight into g3. If you take with the bishop, knight into f5, and if you try to capture the knight, you are losing the bishop on d3. That's what happened. So rook to d1 was played, knight to g5, f4 now. Because if you take the bishop, queen f5, and the position looks good for black, I would say, because first of all we have this knight versus bishop, always fine, but there are very weak, there are complete weakness in the white position that I would simply give black credit. So after knight to g5, we have f4, and after f4 we have bishop into d3, taking the bishop, queen into d3, and knight to f3 check. After knight f3 check, king g2. And feel free to pause the video, and you are in the shoes of Alireza Firouzja, and unfortunately Alireza Firouzja was not able to find the best move in this position. So can you try to find the best move in this position? So okay, all those who have came up with the excellent move, knight e1 check, just mind blowing. Knight e1 check, you cannot capture, you actually have to capture the knight, because otherwise it's a check and you lose the queen. So rook takes, queen takes, and basically you have the queen versus bishop, which is completely winning. But in the game, we have rook to c2 check by Alireza, which gave white some chances, I would say, because in the exchange of the queen, we have rook and the bishop. Definitely, I know that he must have thought like rook c2, and when I was also watching, I thought that play rook c2, but yeah, definitely knight e1 is simply winning. But still this is winning. But this took Alireza a bit of efforts to convert this game to win. Like, I won't waste any time, but basically the point is black is having this 2 pawns on the king side against 1, so black can simply easily push. So there were many moves. The game actually went till 63 moves. It's a bit lengthy game, I would say. Alireza slowly and steadily converted this game. After king h3, it's made like this, it's made like this. I think it's simply made like this. If you try to do this, so basically the game should have been ended. If you would have simply played an ID1, the game would have been simply finished in 23 moves. It's very upsetting for Nakamura to lose a game like this. Like, Alireza actually played very interesting chess. He hardly make any blunder. Opening phase, he played completely very well. Queen d6, he made his opponent forced to play g3. Bishop a5, he took the knight, centralized his knight. Rook c, trying to take the open file, trying to put the bishop, trying to take the diagonal control, threatening knight with g3. Rook to d1, trying to protect this bishop. Knight to g5. f4, like f4 I think was not a good move. In this position, bishop to c5 was a good move according to the engine. f4 simply allowed this and this and check. If you take with the rook in this position, you still have knight f3 check, and you take and into this, so you win an exchange. And if you want capture, for example, this, we have queen e4. So it's already bad for that. Yeah, but if he would have played rook knight e1, it would have been something phenomenal. But rook c2 was also winning. You are basically forced to capture, because if you try to capture this, we have queen h5 check. You are forced to play this, and it's over. So this was the second mind-blowing game, brilliant game played by Alireza Firouzja with the black pieces against Hikaru Nakamura. So yeah, these were the two interesting games of Nepomniachtchi and Hikaru Nakamura against Alireza Firouzja. And I hope that you guys have liked the game, because all the Sicilian players, all the English players, and all the players who are trying to find a new opening with the white pieces, I think you can definitely go for it, because this opening is particularly good for white. But if black knows how to play correctly, like how Alireza played it, then it can be some trouble. And actually, you can simply check out some games with the white pieces, and you would eventually get to know how to play correctly with the white pieces. So yeah, this was the game. So I hope that you must have liked it, and if you have learned anything new by looking at the game, by the analysis of the game, then make sure to like the video, Share this video with everyone and subscribe to the channel if you are new to our channel. I'm going to come up with these interesting analysis of the videos. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.